Technology, diversity, wine, the redwoods, and everything in between. Welcome to the Northern California Bay Area, and one show takes you inside the real estate that makes it all happen. This is By the Bay.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to By the Bay. This is my name is Dan Ancheta. Easy to say, I guess, this morning, and I am really grateful to have my friend Amee Sas here today, and she is a realtor at Vanguard Real Estate in Sebastopol, California. And we were just chatting about how we actually met, and it's a kind of a long, funny story that in prior careers before we got into residential real estate, we met each other when you were the executive director at a startup incubator, and I was in commercial banking. We connected then, and now here we are. So introduce yourself, Amee. Tell us about you a little bit, and then let's talk about what's going on in real estate.
Okay, should I be looking in this camera, Dan, or do I look at
me?
you?
No, this is we're having a conversation.
You guys are going to see my side profile.
Forget that the cameras are here.
Okay, good. I'm Amee Sas. I sell real estate in Sonoma County. I keep it to Sonoma County, man. Mostly I do West County, Santa Rosa, Sebastopol, Petaluma.
Nice. That's a really lovely area. I really like. There's so many cool little communities that exist that are have their own unique identity, that have really cool things. We're talking about Freestone, and that. I love that area. We get out there as much as we can to go to a Wildflower Bakery and also Day Spa, and then we usually head up the hill and go to Occidental and go to breakfast at Howard's. At Howard's
of course
Station.
you do.
That's like the best part of that whole thing is that there's no cell phone coverage. So you can go out there and there's sorry, cell phone doesn't work. Saturday, can't get a hold of me.
And you know what? Howard's recently sold, and I was like, oh, no, man, no, because the food is so good. It's still just as good, delightfully.
That's great. I haven't been there in a couple of months, so we'll have to, now that I'm saying that, I'll have to make it a point to get out there.
Yes. I go to Wildflower Bakery so often that the other day I went and the woman was like, you're not wearing your hat today.
Oh, my goodness.
Like, hello.
Hi.
Just some scones.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if you haven't been to Wildflower Bakery, let's put a big not sponsored post here, but not sponsored content. Wildflower Bakery may be the best bakery in the North Bay. Della Fattoria here in town is really close. Okay. I think I actually do. I'm gonna say it.
Step out on a limb.
I will say it. Wildflower Bakery.
Yes.
Best bakery in Northern California.
Dude, I have been in line there, and people are coming from crazy, drove an hour and a half.
Oh, yeah.
It's 8 a.m. in the morning. They drove an hour and a half, and they're like, oh, yeah, I'm bringing this back for the family today. And they're ordering a crazy amount, and they're ordering for several families or whatever.
It's amazing.
People drive to that.
They're finding out who on the street, and they're blocking San Jose who wants bread from Wildflower.
Right? I know.
Send someone out to do it.
How cute.
Super fun. Mm-hmm. So it's a cool area to be selling real estate in, because it's not really cookie cutter kind of. There are track home neighborhoods, but you're dealing with a lot of unique, interesting properties, ranch properties, properties that have vineyards and hobby vineyards and hobby farms and all sorts of stuff. So kind of give us a look into what's going on in that market right now.
Yeah. When you're selling in a neighborhood, it's easier to evaluate something and say it's this price or that price. I think that people have a tendency, even still in country property, to consider things like price per square foot. That's not really a thing. How are you going to evaluate? There's something called ancillary land, right? This is the home site. This is the garage. This is my little hobby vineyard. We'll evaluate the hobby vineyard at this much, and your home at that much, and your shop at this much, right? But then how much is all of this other land worth, right? How much is your 30 acres of forest worth? How much is your 1 acre of hillside worth, you know?
Well, it's interesting because some of those different parts of a property might have restrictions on what you can and can't do. There might be a wetland, and so how do you value something like that? That's a really interesting question.
How are you going to evaluate a 10-gallon per minute well in Occidental in a water scarce zone?
Right.
If you look at the house that sold next door that looks pretty comparable, except that one doesn't have any water and this one does, how much extra would you pay, and what is that worth?
That's a really good. So walk us through that. How is that math done? How do you come up with those valuations? Because I look at real estate all day, every day, right?
Yeah.
So, and there's a wide range.
Yeah.
So what is that? what is it kind of looking like right now?
Even more fascinating than that, I'll address that, but even more fascinating than that, I think from the lending perspective, I mean, as a lender, do you know the gallons per minute of the well of the house that someone's buying?
No.
That's cray, isn't it? Because this house can't sell and didn't sell for 2 years
Right.
because of the water. It doesn't matter what the house looks like.
Right.
That house doesn't, you have to truck in water. Something about that is fundamentally freaky to people, especially someone for like a second home or whatever. They don't understand wells and septics. This place doesn't have water. It might not even be that much more expensive to truck in water year over year than having your house on,
Yeah.
municipal water systems. It doesn't matter to people. Fundamentally, it bothers them. They don't want that. And as a lender, not knowing that, that's freaky.
Yeah.
you know?
So like we have to look at, we have get
Yeah.
well reports of certain types of loans
Sure.
and then, I do a lot of loans up in the Russian River area.
Yes.
And so we have very interesting septic systems in the area, redwood boxes and
Indeed.
interesting,
Totally.
like, funky stuff that is
Yes.
like unique to that area.
Yeah.
And it's a very nuanced thing, and you have to know what you're doing, and you have to know how to work through the guidelines to make sure
Yes.
that your underwriter, who may not be familiar with those things, like I become the one leading the dance with the underwriters to
Yes.
go, this is normal standard for the area. So like
Yeah.
this is what the guideline says about that, and here's how we
Yeah.
navigate that. So it is definitely, I'm not sure, so it is definitely important that when you're working with a lender or a realtor that they understand the nuances of that property
gosh.
and that they understand like what is the water table doing in that particular valley in that particular area. Like that is so nuanced that you can't have somebody who doesn't intimately know it be able to communicate to you and have the conversation about value and what the alternatives are to those things. So like if you
Yes.
don't have water because the aquifers drop so much and your well's only drilled so many feet,
Right.
how do you
Yeah.
live there?
Yes.
And if you're not there full time, which happens so often in those unique, country properties where it is an out of the area owner who's going to use it for vacation or weekends or whatever their thing is, second dwelling. It's hard to, being able to quantify what does that mean to the value of the property?
And what does it mean to me? Are you using that property because you intend to do a short-term rental
Right.
on it, or it's a long-term hold for you, or
Right.
this is a place where you gather with your family? In that case, how much does that mean to you? Because one thing is the value of the property, and the other thing is what you're trying to accomplish in your life,
I like that a lot. I challenge the realtors that I work with a lot to think about like asking the questions differently. Instead of
Yeah.
jumping into the conversation about how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, like before you get there, like tell me why you want to
Yeah.
buy a new home.
Yeah.
What is happening in your life that is leading us to having this conversation?
Yeah.
Because if it's, one of those major life events, then like the way that you approach them is going to be very different, right? So, we're getting divorced, right? Whatever that is. Okay, well, like that's a completely different conversation than we're getting married.
Yeah,
How do you handle that? Or, hey, we're in a financial position that we want to have this second home in this particular area that we're going to use really just for kind of weekends and holidays and, to gather our family. Okay, well then your needs as far as like daily livability might not be as important as the great room that's going to accommodate the big party. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, so anyway,
It does.
I don't think a lot of people have those conversations where they get into like, before we start talking about what school district we're in, why are we here?
Yeah. I think too, on that vein, is where did you grow up? What's the first house that you remember? What do you remember about that house?
Why do you think that's important?
What did you love about that house? Here's the thing. People so often say, I don't care the style of house. What's most important to me is privacy. Or they'll say something like that. I often hear that. But it turns out that every house that you ever lived in was Victorian, and your bedroom was always on the second story. You know what I mean?
Right.
Interesting. Because you're saying you don't care about right? And even when someone tells you, like, I'm looking for a modern house, but then when you talk to them deeper, it's like they've always lived in ranches.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And they end up buying a ranch, and you don't know that. You're looking for a modern house for them.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about they're kind of like conditioned in a way that this is what is normal for them.
Yes.
So, if you grew up in the country,
Right.
you probably want something that is similar to that with a ranch style. Right?
Yes.
I do. That is interesting. Like, I am not comfortable with having bedrooms on the first floor. Now that you say that, right?
Right.
Like, it kind of freaks me out. Like, there's something about being on the second story that it
makes you feel better, especially with kids.
For sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. At our house, we have like all the kids are down the hall, and our bedroom is like at the top of the stairs.
Yes.
So like, there's no getting past me.
Indeed.
And that's like super important to me.
We have the same thing.
Yeah.
I open up my bedroom door, the master is at the end, and then I'm looking at their 2 bedroom doors.
Yep.
So at nighttime or whatever, I leave my door open. It's like, hey, turn off the light. And they're like, you can see it.
Yeah, totally.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's
that's a really interesting, like, kind of psychological approach to it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, tell me about the house that you grew up in, and what happens if you have 2 buyers that have completely different experiences.
Okay, check this out. When you go through that process with them, like, let's start with you and then let's move to your wife, and you can ping pong between the 2 of them. And what happened when you moved from there? And then where did you go when you moved from there? And in any of those, did you pick the house, or that's where you ended up because you had roommates, or you know what I mean?
Right.
The first house that you bought, right? Like, tell me about that, and why did you buy that house, And oftentimes too, what will happen is people will say, well, I grew up in apartments. There was nothing that I liked about them, and we don't need to talk about it,
But isn't that a huge clue? Like, that for me, I'd take that and I would say, why is buying a house important to you? Right.
Yeah.
Well, like, and if it's like, oh, I grew up in apartments and never had like a safe recurring place because we were always kind of moving, whatever else. Okay. Well, then maybe the question is more so, if I can help you find a stable, predictable, safe place for you to raise your family, like, let's talk about what that looks like and feels like to you. And if we're in a world now where people are shopping us all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like, we're all at risk of losing our clients every single day.
Mm-hmm.
You have clients you've been working with for years, and then they go to an open house, and the realtor who happens to be there is the one who writes the offer because they convince them somehow that that's a better deal for them.
Yeah.
Like, but if you have this deep, intimate connection with them, and you're like, hey, I understand why you're here and what is driving you to this decision to buy a house, I think that is a game changer in terms of overall customer satisfaction, not being, the cheapest, having to be the cheapest option all the time, and not actually having to be at their beck and call every single moment of every day, right? Because you get on the same page about, I'm not helping you buy a house, I'm helping you find a safe place to raise your family.
Yeah. I would say too, from there, I grew up in apartments. We don't need to talk about it. There's nothing to see here.
Yeah.
Right. But was there someone, an aunt, a friend? Where did you go when you saw that? Oh, like, I'd love to be here. I feel good here.
Right.
What house was that growing up? Oh, well, actually, my grandma had a farm, and in the summers we would go there. And but right?
Yeah.
There usually is a place that someone remembers, a friend, or even like, I watched The Cosby Show and I felt like if I could be, whatever. I know that's probably not the right now because of Bill, but I'm just saying that there usually is something that they saw that made their heart sing. And what was it?
Yeah. It's so funny. I was talking to my wife about this a while back. I will know that we are super successful when we have a house that has 2 staircases that go upstairs, because if you think about all those like sitcoms when we were kids, they all had like 1 staircase in the living room and 1 staircase that went down to the kitchen.
Oh, Will Smith, heck yeah.
Right
Like, yeah, all that.
Like, Full House had that.
Full House.
Family Matters had that.
Yes.
Step by Step had that. They all had it. Go back and look.
Yeah, they did. Full House,
and so you will know that you're successful when you have a staircase that goes from one side, from the living room, and one from the kitchen.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. That's my goal.
You know what? That is interesting. And I too, it's like, if you had a butler's pantry, if you had a room where you put, the house that we have now, it is kind of like a room. It's the under the stairs room, right? That's the pantry. And to me, every time I open the door to the pantry, I'm like, do-do-do, do-do-do.
Yes.
Like, yeah.
I've made it.
Look at my pantry.
Oh my goodness.
It's a small thing, but it's funny, those things that we keep, how much more for someone would, when they go into the house and they see that pantry, and it triggers like, the childhood safety factor of
sure.
what makes me feel good inside.
Absolutely.
And that's not the thing that comes out when people say, I want a modern house with 3 bedrooms or whatever.
Right.
And first of all, why do you want 3 bedrooms? You don't have any kids.
Right.
You know what I mean? It turns out I also work from home and I want an office. Well, does it have to be a bedroom?
Right.
Or could you have something, you know what I mean? The why is always so important.
I think you're getting to the core of like the dream and needs discovery. I think this is an unappreciated art that any salespeople really they have. When someone comes to you to acquire something, a house, a car, a loan, whatever it is, they're trying to achieve something. They have a dream. They have something in their mind. And it's our job to really help them visualize that and see it, and then find the product or the place that matches that need. And I think that like asking better, deeper questions is really the only thing that differentiates you and me from other agents who are just trying to turn and burn deals and don't actually care about their clients, right?
I'll go further on that, which may not be popular.
No, go ahead.
But we're here.
Yeah.
So let's do it. When you're doing Zillow leads and things like that, where the phone is ringing all the time, can you take me here? Can you show me this? What do you know about this house kind of thing?
Yeah.
You don't have the time in the day to meet with clients and have a 3-hour intake about what's important to them. You can't care that much. You don't have time for that.
Right.
And that's fine if you want to pick the low-hanging fruit and just see what lands in the basket. If you want to just run through the field seeing what falls in the basket, that's fine. That's too frantic for me and my personality type. There's actually nothing wrong with doing that. That's okay. And some salespeople do very well at that. I know them.
Yeah.
That's okay. But it's not for me.
Right.
I would rather know deeply and take more time. I would rather that and have a higher close rate and deeper relationships and longer lasting relationships. I'm sure there's some kind of like childhood validation thing that leads to that for me. One thing is having the 2 staircases in the pantry and whatever. And I have my ideas of what that is too, that I'd like to achieve. And another thing is doing well in the world and feeling like knowing someone deeply and seeing them achieve a thing and feeling good about it and feeling good about yourself, and then like having a new friend. It doesn't always happen. Not everyone's going to be a friend.
Right.
But if I don't think that we could in the beginning, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, no, I think I've seen people be wildly successful with Zillow.
Sure.
And they fall into two camps. Those that believe that Zillow will always be there to feed them leads, and they just do as many deals as they can, and they're not super concerned about about the longevity of relationship. It's just close as many deals because Zillow's always going to be here and we'll just be fine.
Sure.
And those that realize that it won't be, and that technology will evolve over time, and they deepen those relationships as much as they can, and they're building a book of business that will survive their relationship with Zillow. And I think that's possible to do, but you have to do it at scale, and you have to have team, and you have to have process, and you have to do it, you have to be a pretty big operation to have, a couple of client concierge, like full-time people who are just taking care of past clients, and they're keeping in contact, and you have to manage a database like crazy. It's a different business. It's not a wrong way, but it is a different business. I think the wrong way, the one thing that's not right to do is just to deal with leads, whether they're Zillow or some other place, doesn't really matter, and not turn those closed deals into relationships just to do them as transactions, because those leads will either get more expensive and make it economically not reasonable for you to do it, and you'll just shrink your margins super, super tight, or they're going to the algorithm will change, the program will change, they'll be bought, they'll turn inside, they'll go out of business, something will happen. And if you don't, that makes you're starting over, right? And then it's not reasonable to go back to those clients you closed 5 years and go, hey, remember me? Now I want to be in a relationship with you. And they're like, we already sold that house and bought another one. You've never followed up with us. We never heard from, like, that's the wrong way to do it. But if you generate, no matter how you generate leads, you have to turn those into relationships and be in relationship with those clients so that they can continue to come back to you. And by the way, the stats on that are staggeringly low. The people who like have repeat clients in real estate that come back to them.
Really?
For lenders, it's awful. I looked up the study some time ago.
We don't even want to talk about it.
Yeah, realtors are also super low. Like it's like 1 in 5 will reuse you.
Yeah.
And when you like survey them, you go back to them, 6 months later, like not how's the house, whatever else, like what was the name of your realtor? Like how many people don't remember? Yeah. Because it's such a not memorable experience that they blanked it out. Yeah. They might love the house.
Sure.
They might have good feelings about how the transaction went. But you didn't do any work to like cement yourself as their go-to person.
Yeah.
Anyway, so.
I think too that with anything that seems like money for nothing and chicks for free, it's probably like bad news. It's like the Zillow thing. Even there are some large real estate companies that are like, well, here's a CRM and use this CRM and here's all of these things and we'll pay you money so that you come here. Actually, every time I get a phone call from another brokerage that's like, we'll offer you X dollars to move to our brokerage, it's always a yellow flag to me. Like, I just imagine too, in Pinocchio where it's like, yay, there's this magical island where you can eat all the candy you want. Yep. And then the gates close and everyone's a donkey. Like, no, no, man, I don't need a gate. I don't want the candy. I want to do this in a way where I feel good about myself. Right. And what I'm doing and what I'm contributing and anything that anyone else has to offer me. Same thing with, it's like, if you join this brokerage, now I'm really going to make enemies, welcome. If you join this brokerage, anyone that joins your team after you'll get a percentage of their thing for life or whatever. I don't want a percentage of their thing. I don't want to give anyone, it's low vibes, man. I don't want to give someone a percentage of my thing. I don't want you to pay me to go there. Right. I don't want to pay you for your leads. I don't want to live my life like that. I don't need that. I 100% agree on a lot of that, and I can't speak to it from the realtor side, but from the mortgage side, I've heard and seen people who get paid these like huge bonuses to join a company, and then they're kind of stuck and they're beholden to that. And then their rates get changed, like their margins get changed, like things that happen because that company has to make their money back. I'll go even further than that. Do you know why they're paying for you to come there?
Tell me why.
It's just like an agent that pays for leads.
Okay.
Right? Uh-huh. They're not in it for the relationship with you.
Right.
They're not having a deep relationship with there. Maybe I'm extrapolating that too far, but that's how it feels to me, Yeah. I'd go somewhere where I had a better relationship. I know the owners of my company. I like them as people. Right. I like how they live their life. I like how they talk to people. I like the respect that they have for people. I like the respect that they have for themselves. I like that about them. If I met them on the street, I'd be friends with them.
Right. So shout out to the owners of Vanguard.
Yeah, man. And that's just who I want to surround myself with. That's why when I meet someone, like if I'm at open house or whatever, if I could choose a client, I want the happy, kind person that I'd like to be friends with. If I could choose a company, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I want the vibe to be good around me. I don't want to be in a place where it's like, I brought you here, I'm taking from you. Yeah. Or you brought me here, you're taking from me. And that's the basis of our relationship.
For sure.
Like that.
Yeah. In the past, I have worked in both types of those situations.
Sure, me too.
And it is remarkable how your productivity increases or decreases depending on the overall vibe of what's happening behind the scenes and how people make you feel and how you're welcomed and how you're treated. And I think it's really, really important right now with the market being what it is and it's more difficult that leaders and managers are paying attention to the soft things and they're not just saying, we've got to cut these people and we've got to make these, we got to be profitable. We got to do all these things. And it's like, well, we got to really care about these people.
Yes.
We need to have more conversations about how people are doing and to touch base with them and to have, to show people empathy and that you genuinely care about their lives. So tell the listener, because they probably don't know, that prior, so you've been in real estate for a long, long time, right? And there was a time that you were on the commercial side, and you worked to lease out the initial run of the Barlow development in Sebastopol, which was a huge redevelopment program that they took a bunch of old warehouses and apple processing.
It's an 11-acre campus that was the original apple processing place in Sebastopol. In fact, there used to be a train that ran through the center of Sebastopol, and it went through that part of town as well. The old train depot, one of them, is in the Barlow. Most people don't know that. There's a bunch of train tracks. You'll see them if you look for them anyway there. And so it was, I don't want to say a derelict part of town. It was an industrial, commercial part of town from a long time ago. Right. Just imagine it.
And adjacent to the downtown core and all the...
Yes, There was... I'm an overshare, but there was a soup company in there when we began the project that looked like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, but in a terrible way. Just like tubes with going through, just icky, everything was tacky in there. It horrified me so much. I was like, I will never have canned soup again in my life. I will never have canned. Are you kidding? This is horrible. It was, whatever. It was an industrial complex. And that's a disappearing thing anyways in the United States, right? Like small soup producers, let's just say, along with other things too, as just conglomerates happen and small people producing things go out of business. The town of Sebastopol said, hey, we'll allow you to do this redevelopment if a certain percentage of the people that you lease to there are making their own thing. The spirit of the Barlow is a place where makers were. It is an industrial, commercial part of town. We're not just going to turn it into another cotting town or something like that, right? You have to have makers in there producing the things that they sell.
So it's
right?
like small batch. There's like coffee shops and restaurants and breweries and artists and Vanguard Real Estate is there.
Okay, Vanguard Real Estate is in a building of the Barlow that was still zoned as office. There was different quadrants in there, right?
Got it.
So that was the only building, one of the two only buildings that would allow for office. So Vanguard kind of snuck in there. That's the same building where the hairdresser is at.
Got it.
Because that's the same zone, right? Like the hairdresser isn't necessarily making her scissors.
But everything else has to be makers, local, small. Yeah. And it reminds me a lot of like Oxbow Market in Napa.
Exactly.
Right? But it's really like a place that you can go, you can park in one place and you can spend a day.
Yeah. And there's one in Marin too, the Country Mart, right?
Oh yeah, okay.
But that's also a vibe check thing. It's the difference between shopping at Whole Foods back in the day or Oliver's and like Safeway, because Whole Foods used to be all about having local producers. It's not that anymore because they were acquired. But Oliver's is, when you go into Oliver's and their produce section, you can see all of the farmers, the pictures of the local farmers. That used to be in Whole Foods too.
Right. It's cool when you go into Oliver's because it shows you like these carrots were grown at this farm that's 45 miles away, right?
Dude,
so
that's a vibe check. Right. That's an experience that you have when you shop there that makes you feel good. And that's why you're paying more for carrots at Oliver's than you are at Safeway.
Right.
And that's what the Barlow is too, Right.
So you were the original leasing agent there that was finding these artists, matching them with the space. Yeah. Helping them like doing the leasing and then like what's the build out that you need for your project, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then that turned into an opportunity to go lead SoCo Nexus, which was a business startup incubator at Sonoma Mountain Village in Rohnert Park.
And a plug for Sonoma Mountain Village is they're the first One Planet community inside of the United States, which is the concept that you could, inside of a community, have everything that you need inside that community to be sustainable. So you would grow, you would have place for growing food, you would have a school inside of there, you would have a place where people could work, you would have like all of those things would happen where you would be able to ride your bicycle or walk and have everything that you needed there.
And that's still being developed.
And that is still being developed.
Just about to break ground on like a bunch of
they are, man,
residences businesses up
And
there?
now there are other One Planet communities inside the United States. That's like a more common thing.
Sure.
But speaking of Sonoma County being on the forefront and having small startups and innovative things, like that was a really big deal that's in Sonoma County. That's a really beautiful concept.
Right. So you were leading this incubator where you had
Yeah.
startups, small businesses
Yeah.
that were coming in looking for mentorship, an office space,
Yeah.
a place to conduct their business, but also like business connections so they can skip some steps and find success faster. So you led the initiative as the director of that, and that included the leasing of the space, finding the participants, and then matching them with mentors and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that did like for 3 or 4 years you did that?
I did that for 3 or 4 years. And the interesting thing was, before me, the people that they had hired as the executive directors were Mensa level MBA and PhD folks who had multiple patents, right? So people who had run multiple businesses, had multiple patents, their pedigree was gnarly. The people who were executive directors ahead of me, right? But the business incubator space itself was largely empty.
And how did you turn that around?
The vibe check, like, hey, who has a good attitude, who's positive, who's happy to be here? Not how many patents do you have and how many businesses have you started in the past?
Okay.
What, how much income do you have? None of that.
Right.
How happy are you to be on this road together?
Sure.
How delighted will you be? How are you going to welcome in? Are you going to help other people with your knowledge here?
Right.
Because as soon as I got a couple of happy people in the business incubator, it was like, oh, look, here's Dr. Lou, right? And Dr. Lou did have crazy patents,
Right.
But if you have anything to do with the health space and you're interested in breaking into Asia, here's Dr. Lou. He'd be delighted to help you. That's a big deal, dude. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So it's people who are really willing to participate, people who were positive and were a model match and believed in the mission.
Exactly.
Not necessarily those just needed an office.
Not people who needed to crash and didn't care and were going to close their door.
Right.
Yeah.
They checked the boxes of being eligible.
Yeah.
That wasn't it. It was more so, do they believe what we believe? Can we rely on each other to help each other grow? Are they going to participate in the success of other people and investing their time and energy into that?
Yeah.
That's really cool. And so what happened with that entity?
Eventually, a bunch of those companies graduated, and part of the mission of Somo Village was to have a school there to complete the One Planet vision. And Credo High School needed to move, and the space that the incubator was in, there was a higher use there for Credo High School to be there. So Credo High School moved there. But they recently have, again, created a co-working space. It's not a business incubator.
No, but
there's a place where you can work there.
I haven't been there yet, but I've seen lots of pictures and that sort of thing of people that are utilizing that space up there, and that I need to get up there and check it out. It looks
oh my
cool.
gosh, it is gorgeous.
I love the co-working model. I think it's really neat.
Me too.
Especially as the work, like the way that we work is changing.
Yes.
And you need less office space and you need more flexibility.
Yes.
And I think it's a really cool trend, and I hope that it continues.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. I think if we learned anything from COVID, we're better together. We're just better together. Humans need that,
For sure.
And that's the thing too about the turn and burn of clients. Yesterday I was watching a thing on how to make dumplings. Believe me, it'll come back around.
Go on.
And the woman was saying that when you are mixing the meat in any kind of Asian food or dumpling, right, that you always stir in one direction, because when you stir in one direction on a molecular level, you're creating long chains of links that keep the consistency together of the meat inside of that thing. If you reverse direction on it, then when you cook that thing, the meat will be all loose in there, right?
Okay.
if I were to just like cut and burn clients, I would not have the long chain inside of my community that will support me and my family and my children. I won't have the chain to support them either. It'll just be a loose bag. If we didn't care about the relationships that went into SoCo Nexus, it would be a bag of marbles. It would not be a pot sticker. I want a pot sticker so that we have the long chain in our DNA to support one another, you know?
Yeah, that makes, I mean, yes, I had not heard that before, but that makes sense. And it definitely is one of those where you're building success and you're building relationship. Yeah. And if you do a good job and you invest your time and energy and you put love and heart into your conversations.
And you're cooking.
Then those people that you like bring into your circle then will want to share that experience with other people, and they invite other people into that circle. Yeah. And it's a really great way to do business because it's not like I have to get paid. I'm so worried about my next thing. I have to make a commission. It's like, no, I'm taking care of people.
Yeah.
And when I do a good job of taking care of people, there is a financial benefit of that, but that is secondary to my primary mission of making sure that people are in the right homes to meet their needs today and tomorrow, and to be with them throughout their life, to be able to make pivots and changes if something changes in their life.
And that's the vibe check too for us. Am I here looking at the money? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You have to be able to separate yourself from that check, for that vibe check.
Right. Well, you got to do the right thing for the client, right? So we see it all the time where it's like, okay, well, what's really the best thing here for our client? And if that is, if the right thing for the client is in a situation where you don't get paid, I don't get paid, that's still the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And that we have to realize that by doing the right thing for the client, that pays off in the long run. One, because you can sleep at night and you don't,
Number one
for sure. Number two, they appreciate that advice and they can see that you had the opportunity to give them other advice and you didn't. And that makes you trustworthy and they want to share you with other people. And that one decision to do the right thing for the client, do that enough times, you wind up with a crazy loyal fan base of people who want to share your contact information and make sure that all their friends and family are coming to you for all their real estate needs.
I have to say, my favorite sales technique would be the release.
Yeah.
And an example would be...
tell me about that.
I'm not sure about this. I'm not sure that this... I could probably make this work. If I could get it for this price, then I think it would work for me.
Mm-hmm.
Don't worry about that, dude.
Right.
Find something that you're so excited about that you'll make that work. I don't want to know what you could do. And if, you know what I mean? If you're not stoked about this thing,
right,
don't make it work. Don't make this thing work. Find the thing that you're delighted about, that you have joy in your heart about, and do that thing, man.
Is your recommendation that your clients vocalize how stoked they are on a property when they're walking through it? Or do you say, like, let's be reserved and let's try to negotiate here? Like, what is your tactic there?
My recommendation is to never talk in the house, period, negatively, because you don't know who's listening, and that's a vibe check too. First of all, it's bad juju to say anything negative inside of a house. My mom comes with me often on open house to keep me company and to be my bodyguard, right? But I always have someone with me at open house. Yeah. And I'll say it to lenders too, but especially like my mom when she comes, I'll remind her in the car on the way there, don't say anything negative about the house in the house. Number one, someone could be listening. And number two, it's just plain disrespectful.
Right.
You know what I mean? Don't do that.
Yeah.
But a mistake that agents make, I think, and I see this, and this happened recently, and this is very sad. And if you are the person that this recently happened with me, I'm still sorry that this happened. But here's what happened, Dan.
Please do tell me, Amee.
I keep a list of the folks who have showed a house, and we call back and get their feedback. And I share that feedback with the seller, Dan. This is a common thing, right? And then should an offer come in, I go back to that list. And if anyone was interested, even mildly interested, I call them and let them know, to give them the benefit to say, hey, listen, you showed even mild interest. We have an offer. I just didn't want you to not know that to not have your client know that.
Sure.
Right?
Here's
And
an opportunity
this
for you.
This is a courtesy call
Sure.
to you.
Absolutely.
Right? Someone gave feedback that a property didn't work for their client because of this, that, and that. Right?
Which is totally fine, right? It's not
Which
the right
is
property
totally
for
fine.
them. No
it's
problem.
not the right property for them. Right? And then she called back and said, hey, I'm going to be showing it on Saturday. I didn't realize that it was the same client, right?
Okay.
We got an offer. In the list, when I went through the list, her client's not interested. She didn't get a call. That went into contract. That client is devastated, you know? But what it said was the living room might not work for them. They're not sure about that empty lot like next door. It was a bunch of negative things, you know?
Okay. Yeah. So it's like you're reading the feedback. You're like, this isn't going to work for them.
I believe that in this market, as agents and clients, the idea is the market might go down lower. So I'm going to be reserved and I'm going to give my negative feedback because I'll probably be able to negotiate this down. It's kind of a hardball tactic.
Sure.
There are sellers that would rather foreclose than hear something insulting about their house and then sell it to you. Don't do that, dude. Always be kind. You know what? It was a beautiful house. We haven't ruled it out. They had some concerns. You know what I mean?
There's some diplomacy will go a long way there, right?
You know?
Because I think you're right. Like, we don't want to badmouth the property and then that's like, well, the kitchen sucks and this sucks and this sucks. But hey, we'll buy it for you for $100,000 less.
But it would work if I could.
Yes.
It doesn't work on the buyer side either. Don't buy this house if it doesn't work for you.
Right.
That's the giveaway. That's the release. If this house doesn't work for you, don't buy it at any price. At $0, buy this house that doesn't work for you. At $0. Don't do it, you know? And on the seller's side, if somebody said something like, you know, the curb appeal was awful and I just don't see how anyone made that living room work, but if you would sell it at this, no, because that seller, even in this market, will wait for somebody who they feel, and they'll sell it at that price or less. You know, they will. So just like say kind things inside of the house to yourself, to the seller, to other agents, you know, kind things.
Yeah. I think, and there's a way that you can say this house isn't for us.
This house isn't for us.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Thanks for letting me come through.
Thank you so much for letting me come to your beautiful house.
Yep.
I know that it will work for someone.
Totally. And
you
then
know?
release it and let it go. It's stuff like that I really appreciate hearing, because it's like that makes so much sense, and I don't see that part of the transaction in my world because I'm dealing with the buyer, right?
Yes.
And we hear things about the seller, but we don't really communicate too much with them. The seller's agent for sure we talk to, but we don't ever really get to know the seller.
Yeah.
But that makes a lot of sense just in terms of like, I would not want to sell my home to somebody who walked through it bashing the work that we put into it and saying, I don't know how anyone ever made that work. It's like, well, I have great memories of that room with my family and gathering there. Like no, you're out. I will take less money, dude, for sure.
I had a deal last year where the buyer's agent was pretty abrasive, and at a certain point didn't remove. Actually, what happened was, Dan, what really happened?
The truth.
The truth of it is that they had written an offer that was contingency free.
Okay.
And I had countered their offer for price. And in the counter, I gave them 3 days to consider the house themselves and hire their own folks to look at it.
Right.
Right? Take your time and make sure of the condition of the
one.
Right? I don't want a contingency free offer. I want to make sure that this works for you. Take 3 days and have your own people come through the house, right?
Or at least have a chance to read the reports
Or at least
and ask some questions.
And call the people who wrote those reports.
Right? Yeah.
Have your mom come.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just take that minute, right? So 3 days pass, and I asked them to then remove that contingency. But the agent didn't notice that I had given them 3 days and didn't communicate that to the buyer. So they did not want to release that contingency because it would have put egg on their face. And so the agent said to me, if you don't want to sell this house to my buyer because of that, because I'm not going to do that, then go ahead and give us a notice to perform or quit, and my buyer will buy another house, right?
Okay. Yeah, great.
I called the lender and I was like, hey, I'm not sure if this is the agent or the buyer. You know, I don't know that the buyer even knows that there is this contingency
that we're asking them to release. Right?
And the agent is instructing me to give a notice to perform or quit, which I don't mind doing. But like, have they turned in all of their documentation to you? Are they still moving forward? And he was like, oh my God, please do not give a notice to perform or quit to them. The mother is disabled. This is the only house in their price range in all of Sonoma County that they've seen that would work for her to get her wheelchair in, where there's 2 suites so that she can have a caregiver. And it would be devastating to them if you cut them. Please do not do that. Please don't do it. So I talked to the sellers and we made a decision together not to do it, and they did close. But imagine how devastating words can be. You know what I mean?
That's so sad. And it's like, this is all ego, right? These are people
ego.
like it's just come to the table and make it work. Just figure out
Right?
just figure out a deal that works for everybody.
Dude.
There's some give and take there. And like, no one has to look
Yeah.
bad. No one has to be
No.
thrown under the bus. Like,
No.
let's just have a nice civil conversation that we go, hey, I didn't know that contingency was there. I'm going to look bad if I didn't tell my
Right.
clients about this. How can we work this? Like,
Right.
you would be willing to talk with them, but that
Right.
hard line, take it or leave it thing is not the jam.
Right? Or even like, now that I didn't realize that was there.
Yeah.
Now that I realized that was there, my client didn't have the benefit of those 3 days
Right.
because may we have 3 more days?
Right.
Sure, man.
Yeah. Totally.
Please do. You know, words are things, and what we say matter, and how we say it matter. Like, words are real things, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
And when I get into contract with clients on things too,
Yeah.
it's like, hey, let's have positive thoughts too while we're at it.
Where
Might as
does this all, like, where did you learn all this stuff? Like, where did you, like, talk to me, like, where does this idea of, like, making sure that we're choosing our words wisely and we're communicating, like, how did that come into your life?
That's interesting. Growing up, my mom was in Course of Miracles and all of that kind of like stuff. It just kind of ran in the background in the house. And I'm just a curious person anyway, for that kind of thing. I wouldn't say that I'm a religious person, but I think I am a spiritual person.
Okay.
And, you know who I love listening to is Les Brown. Do you know Les Brown?
Yeah.
I just love that dude. I don't know. I'm always listening to stuff like that. If you could put yourself around successful people, if you could put yourself around kind people, if you could talk to yourself kindly, if you could have kind interior monologue, if you could have anything that you wanted in the world and we could make that happen together, just mine as well, dude. Because there's enough like heartache and fear out there. And there are 2 ways to sell. You can sell with fear or you can sell with honey, essentially, right? I just choose not to sell with fear because I don't want to live my life like that. And it turns out it's just not necessary. And one of the things too about somebody who's unkind that comes to me at open house or is referred to me somehow weirdly, I usually don't get those kinds of referrals because the kinds of clients that I have are kind, you know? But should that person like cross my desk, usually people want to work with people like they are.
Right.
And an unkind person will probably end up with a salesperson that uses a hammer.
Right.
And that's not me.
Right. And they'll self-select out of your program.
Out of my sphere. And
Yeah.
that's great
Right.
because I also, it doesn't work best in negotiations to negotiate with a hammer or to use ultimatums. And to have a client that wants me to negotiate with a hammer, it's not going to go in their best favor, and that's going to hurt my feelings. I can do it. It's not going to work out for you.
Right.
I'd rather not.
There's probably a time and place for a hammer, but it's probably not every single day, all day. The hammer given with love, right?
it's never a forced hammer. It's the consequence of someone's own decision and actions that gets them their outcome.
Right.
It's not even a hammer, dude. It's their own decisions that produce their own outcome naturally in the flow of life. If you don't do something that you said you would do, you will have a negative outcome.
Right. Like that's just
in real estate and in life.
That's just the consequence.
Here's what the contract says. If you consider that a hammer, fine, I'll give it to you with love. But it is a contract, and that's what you said.
Right. The enforcing of it and going like, this is what we agreed on. Right.
That's right.
Look at that.
If someone thinks that's a hammer, I don't really think that's a hammer.
For sure.
There's different ways of looking at it.
Yeah. So just kind of like, as we're kind of wrapping up here, so you really specialize in that, I would say unique property situation. What is that market doing? Just, you know, is that still appreciating in value? Are we seeing decreases? Is there still a lot of activity? Are they sitting longer? Give us the quick rundown on that before we wrap up.
We're not seeing huge decreases in this moment as a function of inventory. I even, what I'm seeing too, which is a tricky wicket, I think, for buyers, is they think, you know what, this hasn't had any offers on it. I think that I'm going to come in low. That's fine. You can do that all day long, But something happens in the universe, and you see it all the time. When one person is interested in it, someone else is too. And something can be on the market for 268 days and then have 2 offers at the same time. Happens all the time.
All the time.
When you're interested in it and you want something, that's when you get it right then. Do not leave space for the universe to catch up to the bat signal that you sent out of your want, because you did send out a bat signal, whether you know it or not, and the time to get what you want is now. Don't worry about anybody else. Don't worry about the price that you offer. Don't worry about that. If you sincerely want that thing, then you go after it with your whole heart for what you can do now. Don't worry about that, man. That's what's tricky about this market. It's not 2008. In 2008, we were swimming in inventory, swimming in it. We're just not there right now. But for things that would need a special buyer, if you have an organic turnip farm, if you have, you know what I mean? Then that's just going to take longer, and you're going to need to cast a wider net at this time to have the same outcome, period.
And if you need to sell your organic turnip farm, you just go ahead and call Amee, and she'll take care of you.
Yeah, that too.
No, I really love it. I really appreciate you coming on the show, and thanks for the good laughs and a good time. If people want to get a hold of you, how do they find you?
Just call me, 707-695-7000. Just always call me.
Cool.
I'm happy to take your call.
Right on. Well, thanks for being here. Really appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
Stay up to date with Bay Area real estate. Hit subscribe now if you haven't already. Did you enjoy this episode? We love reviews in the Apple Podcasts app. We'll read yours on the show. Hear more shows about Northern California now